Hello, my name is Frank Hezemans. I'm a researcher at the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences unit. And in this video, I'm going to talk about boosting the brain's adrenaline in Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease is commonly known as a movement disorder, which means that individuals suffer from slowness of movement, tremor, those sorts of symptoms. And these are quite well treated by medication that boost levels of dopamine in the brain. But this is also just one aspect of the disease, and there is a wide range of problems relating to cognition, so thinking and behavior in individuals with Parkinson's disease. For example, you see quite risky behavior, problems with sleep, loss of motivation, and also just an inability to stop yourself from doing things that spring immediately to mind. So problems with inhibition. And these sorts of issues are not well treated by dopamine at all. So we need some sort of alternative strategy to treat these symptoms. And in this video, I'm focusing on this problem with inhibition. So if dopamine doesn't really help these cognitive problems, then what else can we look at? Well, one obvious target is the locus coeruleus noradrenaline system. The locus coeruleus is a very small structure in the brain stem, which sends noradrenaline to the entire brain. And why is this relevant to Parkinson's disease? Well, in Parkinson's disease, the locus coeruleus is actually one of the earlier sites of pathology, and it's also quite severely affected if I just scroll through these stages of the disease here. So it would be really useful if we could know for a given individual what the integrity of their locus coeruleus is like. But this is extremely difficult because it's such a small structure. It's really like looking for a needle in a haystack. You have to get your magnifying glass out even to begin to see the structure on an image like this on the left. But thankfully, with some state-of-the-art developments in magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, my colleagues were able to get a very precise picture of the locus coeruleus structure using MRI data. So using this approach, we are able to estimate the structural integrity of the locus coeruleus. And why is this useful for us in the context of Parkinson's disease? Well, when it comes to any sort of drug treatment that targets the neurotransmitter system in the brain, it's really important to know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Having too much and having too little is both bad for your behavioral performance. So it's best to have a sort of intermediate level of the neurotransmitter, in this case, noradrenaline. And this idea is captured by a so-called inverted U-shaped function. What I'm showing in this diagram here, along the y-axis, the vertical axis, is performance. So for example, if we're talking about reaction time, if you're very quick, then you would be higher up on the figure. And if you're slower, then you would be lower down. And along the horizontal x-axis, in this case, I'm showing the level of noradrenaline in the brain. So the idea is that a patient with an individual with Parkinson's disease who is quite severely affected, they would have a more degenerate locus coeruleus and therefore a lower level of noradrenaline. So they would be tipped down towards the left side of this curve. And individuals like these would reasonably benefit from treatment with a noradrenergic drug because we could bring their noradrenaline level back up and thereby improve their behavioral performance. In contrast, an individual with relatively mild or early Parkinson's disease would likely still have this optimal level of noradrenaline in the brain. And if we give that individual the noradrenergic drug, we would actually tip them over the peak because this individual would then have too much noradrenaline which would worsen their performance. So we designed an experiment to test this idea that we could use brain imaging to identify those individuals who would benefit the most from treatment with a noradrenergic drug. So a group of individuals with Parkinson's disease went through brain imaging, and then they did 2 behavioral experiments with us. One of the sessions they were given this noradrenergic drug, and in the other session they were given a inactive placebo tablet. They did a behavioral experiment following this drug administration, and then of course we wanted to compare those sessions to see if treatment with the noradrenergic drug had any benefit relative to placebo, and most importantly, if this benefit could be predicted with locus coeruleus integrity as measured with the MRI data. Now, in terms of the behavioral experiment that the participants did in the lab, they sat in front of a computer screen and they were asked to press a key button as soon as they saw an arrow like this one appear on the screen. So in this case, it's a left pointing arrow. So they were asked to press the corresponding button as quickly as possible. Of course, lower reaction time is better. And they did this over and over again. Now, sometimes after initially being presented with this green arrow, we soon after showed a stop signal, a red arrow and a beep sound. And this stop signal meant that the participant had to quickly cancel their response. So move their finger away from the key button. And this is a bit like when you're approaching a road junction and the traffic light is green and everything is going fine. And then just as you're about to cross the road, the traffic light turns red and you have to stop what you were planning to do and get your foot off of the gas pedal and onto the brake. So here I'm about to show you the results of this experiment. And in this chart, along the horizontal, the x-axis, are the estimates of locus coeruleus integrity from MRI and the brain imaging data. And along the y-axis, I'll show the effect of the noradrenergic drug on performance on this inhibition task. So people, in this case, people who were lower down along the vertical axis actually improved more on the noradrenergic drug, because it means that they had a shorter reaction time on the noradrenergic drug compared to placebo. And higher up on the vertical axis means that they actually worsened after receiving the noradrenergic drug. So here we see a few individuals with a relatively degenerate locus coeruleus. And indeed, these individuals improve a lot after receiving the noradrenergic drug. So they become much quicker. In contrast, somebody with a more preserved locus coeruleus on the right here, they actually show a worse behavioral performance after the noradrenergic drug. So they become significantly slower compared to placebo. And if we look across a group of individuals with Parkinson's disease, we see this very clear pattern where the benefit of treatment with this noradrenergic drug really depends on the integrity of the locus coeruleus structure. So in conclusion, I think what this study shows nicely is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to new drug treatments for a disease like Parkinson's, but we can use brain imaging to identify those individuals who benefit the most from this treatment. And this is really helpful because when it comes to a diverse disease such as Parkinson's, one of the most pressing issues is being able to identify the specific subgroup who can benefit the most from advanced treatments. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'd like to once again thank all the individuals who were involved in this study, and enjoy the rest of the Cambridge Science Festival. Thank you.